All right, let's jump right in. For more than 100 years, the very idea of flying across the Atlantic Ocean has been this epic, captivating dream. But the real story of how we actually did it, well, it's packed with surprising twists, heroes you've probably never heard of, and some really cool geography you might not expect. So let me start by asking you a question. If you had to name the very first person to fly nonstop across the Atlantic, who would you say? Just think about it for a sec. I bet a name popped right into your head. And if you're thinking Charles Lindbergh, well, you're not exactly wrong, but you're not 100% right either. The true story is, as it often is, a little more complicated, and honestly, a lot more interesting. To really get why this was such a huge deal, we've got to rewind the clock. Back to the early 1900s, when the Atlantic wasn't just a big patch of water. No, it was aviation's final frontier. I mean, for generations, that ocean was this massive, dangerous obstacle that took weeks to cross on a ship. The thought of flying over it in just a matter of hours? That was pure science fiction. This wasn't just about going fast. It was the ultimate trophy for a whole new kind of hero, aviators who wanted to see just how far humans could go. And here's the kicker. That trophy wasn't first won by the guy we all remember. So it's time to talk about the flight that history kind of forgot. Okay, check this out. The first nonstop flight across the Atlantic actually happened way back in 1919. That's a full 8 years before Lindbergh's legendary trip. So why don't we know about those first guys? The whole story hangs on one single word: solo. That little detail made all the difference in the world. So who were these real pioneers? Two British flyers, John Alcock and Arthur Brown. Picture this. They take off from Newfoundland in a clunky, leftover bomber from World War I. They're flying through thick fog and freezing rain, with ice constantly building up on the wings. After 16 absolutely grueling hours, they make it. They cross the ocean. But the landing? Not so glamorous. They ended up nose first in an Irish swamp. They made it out alive, but it wasn't quite the heroic finish they were probably hoping for. So if Alcock and Brown were the first to do it, why is Lindbergh the superstar? Well, his flight was legendary for a completely different set of reasons. 8 years later, when Lindbergh took off in his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, he did it all by himself. That act of pure guts and endurance, flying alone for over 33 hours, just electrified the entire planet. He became an overnight sensation. And right here, you can see the big difference. Alcock and Brown's flight was a huge technical win. They proved it was physically possible. But they flew from a remote part of Canada to a remote part of Ireland. Lindbergh, on the other hand, flew from New York City to Paris. He connected two of the most important cities in the world. His flight wasn't just about a machine. It was this huge symbolic moment that grabbed headlines and captured everyone's imagination. And what's really cool is that Lindbergh wasn't just some daredevil pilot. He was a deeply talented mechanic who knew his plane inside and out. In fact, he was so important in helping develop planes that were actually practical and reliable, they nicknamed him a Ford of aviation. He wanted to make flying something for everyone. But this story isn't just about who flew across. It's also about how they did it. And it turns out the smartest way to cross the Atlantic isn't a straight line at all. It's a really fascinating quirk of geography. Just think about it for a second. If you've got a globe, a round object, is a straight line on a flat map really the shortest path between two cities? It feels like it should be, but the answer is not quite. The secret is what's called a great circle route. It's the most direct path you can take on a sphere. The weird thing is, when you take that perfectly straight path from the globe and stretch it out onto a flat map, it looks like a big, soaring arc. This is exactly why, if you ever look at a flight tracker for a plane going from New York to London, it seems to fly way, way up north. It'll curve up past Canada, scoot by Greenland and Iceland, and then drop down into Europe. It looks like the long way around on a map, but it's actually the shortcut. It saves a ton of time and fuel. And you know, a cool side effect is that these routes can give you some incredible views from your window seat. One flight might take you right over the snowy, jagged Alps, while another one heading south might give you a breathtaking view of the Sahara Desert. It's just geometry in action, 30,000 feet below you. And all of that brings us to today. That ocean barrier that once seemed so impossible to conquer has been totally transformed. It's now one of the busiest travel corridors on the entire planet. I mean, the change is just staggering.
What was a nail-biting, life-or-death adventure for those early pioneers is now a totally routine flight for us. We've turned that wild, untamed ocean into a network of invisible, busy highways in the sky.
The legacy of those early pilots is everywhere. It's in the massive airlines like British Airways and Air France that zip people between continents every single day. It's in the giant airport hubs like Heathrow and JFK that act like global town squares. They really did what they set out to do. They made our world a whole lot smaller. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The Atlantic was the great unconquered barrier of the 20th century, a test of pure courage and new technology. Now that we've tamed it, what's our next great barrier? What new ocean of space, of science, of knowledge will the pioneers of our time set out to cross? That spirit of exploration, the one that pushed those first pilots out over the endless water, is definitely still with us, just waiting for the next impossible challenge.